People like to say the courtroom is where the truth comes out. For Marcus Vance, it was where everything unraveled. He believed he was walking away from a broke, worthless wife to replace her with someone younger. He sneered at her worn clothes. He laughed at her silence. He even tried to force her to pay his legal fees, just to humiliate her further. But Marcus made one crucial mistake. He never thought to ask about her name before marriage. And when the judge unsealed the financial affidavit, what followed wasn't justice. It was a merciless lesson in karma that ended up costing one man $40 billion. The scratch of the pen echoed through the spotless, silent living room like a cry. Marcus Vance didn't bother to glance up as he signed the last page of the divorce papers. He slid the document across the marble table toward his wife, Isabella. "That's it," Marcus said flatly, without a trace of emotion. "Don't turn this into a problem, Bella. You know my lawyers are the best in the city. Harrison Stone doesn't lose." Isabella Sterling perched on the edge of the gray velvet couch, her hands calmly clasped in her lap. She wore a worn navy cardigan, one that had clearly aged with time, and her hair was drawn back into a tight, uncomplicated bun. To anyone looking in, and to her husband of 5 years, she appeared exactly as he described her: ordinary, dull, and lacking ambition. "I haven't asked for anything, Marcus," Isabella said quietly. "And you won't get anything." He shot to his feet, snapping as he straightened his cufflinks. Cartier, an item she had spent 2 years saving for, back when he was just a struggling coder working out of a garage. Now, as the CEO of Vance Stream, a tech company nearing a major IPO, he regarded her as if she were a blemish on his flawless image. "Be honest, Bella. You don't match the brand anymore," he said. "The investors, the board, they expect a certain kind of partner. You're charming in your own way, but charm doesn't sell software." The front door clicked open with the self-assured beep of the electronic lock. Tiffany entered, trailing a wave of costly perfume mixed with cool autumn air. At 24, she was the newly appointed vice president of public relations at Vance Stream, and the reason Marcus was dismantling his marriage. "Is it signed?" Tiffany asked, completely disregarding Isabella as she moved straight to Marcus, brushing a speck of lint from his jacket. "Just wrapped it up," Marcus replied, his icy detachment instantly replaced by smooth charm. Bella was simply accepting the conditions. No spousal support. She keeps her, whatever that car is, and she's out of the house by Friday. Isabella glanced at Tiffany. The younger woman wore a dress worth more than Isabella earned in a year as a freelance archivist. Tiffany curled her lips into a sharp, mocking smile. "Friday," she laughed. "That's generous, Marcus. We have the gala on Saturday. I wanted this room for the pre-party photos. The light is better." She faced Isabella, her gaze raking over her from head to toe. "You can pack everything in a few hours, right? It's not like you own much furniture or jewelry." Isabella rose to her feet slowly. She was shaking, not from fear, but from a tightly contained fury blazing in her chest. She looked at the man she had stood by when he couldn't even afford instant noodles. She remembered entering his code when his wrists gave out, cleaning the garage, and holding him as he broke down after his first bankruptcy. "I'll be gone tonight," Isabella said calmly. Marcus gave a brief, mocking laugh. "Even better. I'll have my assistant Venmo you $1,000. Consider it moving money. Find yourself a decent motel. I don't want to deal with this." "I don't want your money, Marcus," Isabella replied as she headed down the hall to collect her already packed suitcase. She had sensed this coming for months. A wife always does. "Good," Marcus called after her. "Because you're not getting a cent. My lawyers made sure the prenup is ironclad. You leave with what you came with." "Nothing." Isabella paused at the door. She turned back one last time. The apartment was a penthouse overlooking the skyline, a symbol of the empire they had built together, though he claimed sole credit. "You're right, Marcus," she said, her eyes suddenly looking very old and very dark. "I will leave with exactly what I came with. Remember that." He didn't even watch her leave. He was already pouring champagne for Tiffany. The rain in Seattle was relentless, matching Isabella's mood as she drove her 2014 Honda Civic toward the older historic district of the city. She wasn't going to a motel. She pulled up to a heavy iron gate surrounding a brownstone building that looked more like a fortress than a law firm. Clear's throat. A brass plaque by the door read Penhaligon Roth and Associates Esther 1902. She buzzed the intercom. "The office is closed." A growly voice crackled. "It's Isabella," she said. "I need to see Arthur." There was a long pause followed by the heavy clank of the electronic latch releasing. Inside, the office smelled of old leather, mahogany, and pipe tobacco. Arthur Penhaligon, a man in his 70s who moved with the slow, dangerous grace of an old lion, was waiting for her in the library. He wasn't just a lawyer. He was the legal custodian of secrets that could topple governments. "Bella," he said, his face softening. He didn't offer a handshake. He pulled her into a hug. "I was wondering when you'd come back to us." "He served the papers today, Arthur," Isabella said, sinking into a leather wing-back chair. She finally let the tears fall. "He's kicking me out. He's with his PR director. He told me I was bad for his image." Arthur poured her a glass of scotch. "Neat. Marcus Vance, the boy wonder. I've seen the news. His company is valued at what? 300 million. Going on 1 billion after the IPO next month." Isabella corrected. "He thinks he's a god, Arthur. He told me I'm leaving with nothing. He mocked my clothes. He offered me $1,000 like I was a beggar." Arthur's eyes narrowed. He walked behind his massive oak desk and picked up a file. "He filed a motion this afternoon. Bella, my clerks picked it up. It's worse than just a divorce." Isabella froze. "What do you mean?" "He's suing you for emotional distress and fraudulent misrepresentation," Arthur said, disgust dripping from his voice. "He claims you tricked him into marriage to ride his coattails. And now that you aren't contributing financially, he wants the court to declare the marriage void, so he doesn't even have to split the appreciation of the assets during the marriage. He wants to humiliate you, Bella. He wants to drag you through the mud to show his investors he's a ruthless decision-maker." Isabella laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Fraudulent misrepresentation. He claims I misrepresented myself. He thinks you're a poor, simple archivist who got lucky snagging a tech genius." Arthur smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was a sharp smile. "He has no idea, does he?" "No," Isabella said. "I wanted a real life, Arthur. I wanted to be loved for me, not the legacy. So I never told him. I lived on my librarian salary. I clipped coupons. I drove that rusted Honda. And he punished you for it," Arthur said. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick wax-sealed envelope. It was stamped with a crest, a silver hawk clutching a golden key, the seal of the Sterling Hargrave Trust. "Your grandfather's trust matures on your 30th birthday, Isabella," Arthur said quietly. "That was 3 days ago." "I know. Do you know the current valuation?" Isabella shook her head. "I haven't checked since I left the estate at 22. Arthur slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. Isabella looked at the number. She blinked, thinking she was seeing too many zeros. She looked again. That's liquid," she whispered. "That is the diversified portfolio," Arthur said. "Real estate, shipping, pharmaceuticals, and tech holdings. You are the sole beneficiary. The Sterling family built the railroads. The Hargraves built the banks. You, my dear, are not just rich. You are a sovereign power." Isabella stared at the paper. It was enough to buy Vance Dream 10 times over and shut it down out of boredom. "Clear's throat, does he know?" she asked. "Nobody knows," Arthur said. "We've kept your identity buried under 3 layers of shell corporations and blind trusts, just as your father instructed. To the world, you are Isabella Sterling, freelance archivist. To the IRS and the inner circle, you are the chairwoman of the board." Arthur leaned forward. "So, the question is, Bella, how do you want to handle Mr. Vance? We can settle this quietly. I can make a phone call, reveal the assets, and he will likely faint and beg for forgiveness." Isabella thought about the way Marcus looked at her earlier that day, the way he brushed the lint off his suit, the way Tiffany laughed about her eviction, the $1,000 for a motel. She stood up, her spine straightening. The slump of the defeated wife vanished. In her place stood the granddaughter of Cornelius Sterling, a man who once bought a country just to fire its prime minister. "No," Isabella said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming cold and precise. "No quiet settlements. He wants a court battle. He wants to prove how smart he is. Let's give him a show. He has Harrison Stone," Arthur warned. "They will play dirty. They will mock you in open court before we get to the financial disclosure phase. Let them," Isabella, Clear's throat, said, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "I want him to say it all on the record. I want him to tell the judge exactly how worthless I am. I want him to dig his grave so deep that he can never climb out." Arthur grinned, capping his pen. I'll file the appearance tomorrow. We won't list the assets yet. We'll wait for the mandatory discovery phase. We'll let him think he's winning. Perfect, Isabella said. One more thing, Arthur. Yes, I need a dress for court, not the cardigan. I believe your mother's vintage Chanel collection is in storage, Arthur noted. And I'll have the driver bring around the rolls, but we'll park it around the block. We don't want to spoil the surprise. No, Isabella corrected him. I'll take the Honda. Let's keep the illusion alive for just a little longer. 2 weeks later, the deposition was held in the conference room of Stone Miller and Associates, a glass-walled aquarium in the sky located on the 45th floor of the city's financial district. The room was designed to intimidate. The table was a slab of polished obsidian that seemed to stretch for miles, and the view outside offered a dizzying perspective of the city, a view reserved for the masters of the universe. Isabella sat on one side, flanked only by Arthur Penhaligon. Arthur looked out of place in this modern shrine to avarice. He wore a tweed three-piece suit that smelled of pipe tobacco and old libraries, and he spent the first 5 minutes of the meeting slowly polishing his spectacles with a silk handkerchief. Opposite them sat the army. Harrison Stone, Marcus' lead counsel, was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and dressed in Italian wool. He had a reputation for making opposing spouses cry within 20 minutes. Beside him sat 2 junior associates, furiously typing on laptops. And next to Stone sat Marcus Vance. Marcus didn't look at Isabella. He was busy scrolling through his phone, occasionally whispering something to Tiffany, who, against all professional protocol, was sitting in the corner of the room, ostensibly as his moral support, though she looked more like a spectator at a gladiator match, waiting for the blood. A court reporter sat at the head of the table, her fingers hovering over her stenotype machine. "We are on the record," Stone announced, his voice booming. "This is the deposition of Isabella Vance, née Sterling, in the matter of Vance versus Vance." Stone leaned forward, clasping his hands. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Vance, we are here to establish the extent of your contribution, or lack thereof, to the marital estate. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You are under oath. Do you understand?" "I do," Isabella said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Let's begin with the basics. You have been married to my client for 5 years. In that time, Vance Stream grew from a garage concept to a multinational corporation valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. Mrs. Vance, are you a software engineer?" "No," Isabella said. "Are you a marketing expert?" "No." "Did you ever hold a position, official or unofficial, within Vance Stream? Did you write a single line of code? Did you negotiate a single contract?" "I did not," Isabella replied. Marcus scoffed audibly. He finally looked up from his phone, a smirk playing on his lips. "She doesn't even know how to reset the router, Harrison. Keep going." Stone held up a hand to silence his client, though he looked pleased. "So you admit that the intellectual property, the business acumen, and the labor that built this fortune were entirely provided by Mr. Vance." Isabella paused. She thought about the nights Marcus had passed out on the floor from exhaustion, and she had covered him with a blanket, printed his pitch decks, and driven them to the post office at 4 a.m. because he was too shaky to drive. She thought about the 2 years she paid the rent, the electricity, and the server costs out of her librarian wages while he made exactly zero. "I admit that I didn't write the code," Isabella said carefully. "I managed the domestic sphere so that Mr. Vance could focus on his work without distraction." Stone laughed. It was a practiced, dismissive sound. "The domestic sphere? You mean you did the laundry?" "Mrs. Vance, in the state of Washington, we look at equitable contribution. My client is prepared to argue that your contribution was negligible. In fact, he is arguing that you were a financial drain. Did Mr. Vance pay off your student loans 2 years ago?" "He did," Isabella said. $5,000. "And did he purchase the vehicle you currently drive?" "He bought the Honda used for me." "Yes. And the clothes on your back?" Stone gestured vaguely at her outfit. She had worn a simple gray suit bought off the rack at a department store 5 years ago. "Did his income provide for your lifestyle during the last 3 years?" "Yes," Isabella said. So Stone leaned back, looking satisfied. "You brought nothing into the marriage. You contributed nothing to the business. You lived off his success. And now that the marriage is ending, you feel entitled to 50% of his hard work. Is that correct?" Arthur Penhaligon cleared his throat. It was a dry, dusty sound. "Mr. Stone, is there a question in there, or are you just auditioning for a courtroom drama?" Stone's eyes snapped to Arthur. The question is simple. On what grounds does the witness believe she deserves a settlement? I am the wife, Isabella said, cutting off Arthur before he could speak. That is the grounds. A wife, Marcus muttered loud enough for the microphone to pick up. More like a squatter. Tiffany giggled from the corner. Stone shuffled his papers. Let's move to assets. We need to establish your current financial standing to determine if you have the means to support yourself without spousal support, which we intend to deny you regardless. Mrs. Vance, other than the personal items in your possession, do you have any bank accounts, stocks, bonds, or real estate holdings in your name? The room went silent. This was the moment. Isabella looked at Arthur. He gave the slightest imperceptible nod. I have a checking account with roughly $800 in it, Isabella said. Anything else? Stone pressed, looking bored. Any hidden accounts? Any inheritance? We ran a credit check. Mrs. Vance, you're a ghost. You have a credit score of 720 and a debt-to-income ratio that suggests you live near the poverty line. I have no other accounts currently in use, Isabella said. That's a vague answer, Stone snapped. Let me be precise. Do you possess or are you the beneficiary of any assets valued at over $10,000 that you haven't disclosed? Isabella looked Stone dead in the eye. I am the beneficiary of a family trust. Marcus laughed out loud. Oh God, here we go. The family trust. She's been talking about her grandpa's legacy for years. It's probably a collection of antique stamps or a shack in the woods. Harrison, don't waste time on this. Stone smirked at Marcus. We have to be thorough, Marcus. Mrs. Vance, what is the approximate value of this trust? Isabella folded her hands. I have not had it appraised recently. Is it worth more than $5,000? Stone asked, his tone mocking. Yes, Isabella said more than 50,000. Yes. Stone rolled his eyes. Fine. We'll clear his throat. Demand full disclosure of this trust in the discovery phase. But let the record show the witness is being evasive about what is likely a trivial amount. We are talking about a company worth billions, Mrs. Vance. Unless your grandfather was a Rockefeller, your little trust fund is irrelevant to the scale of lifestyle you're trying to steal from my client. I understand your position, Isabella said calmly. Good. Stone slammed a folder shut. We're done here. My client has a flight to catch. We'll see you in court, Mrs. Vance, and bring your checkbook. We're going to sue you for legal fees. Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket. He walked past Isabella, pausing just inches from her chair. He leaned down, his cologne overpowering her senses. You should have taken the $1,000, Bella, he whispered. Now you're going to end up homeless. I'm going to make sure the judge knows exactly what you are. A nobody. He walked out, Tiffany trailing behind him, tapping away on her phone. Clears throat. Arthur Penhaligon slowly packed his pipe into his pocket. He looked at Isabella. He called you a nobody, Arthur mused. He did, Isabella said, staring at the empty doorway. The financial disclosure deadline is in 48 hours, Arthur said. I will file the papers regarding the Sterling Hargrave Trust tomorrow morning, but I'll seal them for the judge's eyes only until the opening arguments. Let's let him have his weekend of confidence. Isabella stood up. She felt lighter than she had in years. He thinks he's fighting a mouse, Arthur. Yes, the old lawyer smiled. And he's about to step on a landmine. The day of the hearing, the sky was a bruised purple, threatening a storm. The King County Superior Court was buzzing because of the impending IPO of Vance Stream. The divorce of its CEO had attracted the attention of the financial press. Reporters lined the hallway, cameras flashing as Marcus Vance arrived. He looked every inch the tech titan. He wore a navy bespoke suit, no tie, the top button of his crisp white shirt undone to signal that he was disruptive and modern. Clears throat. Harrison Stone walked beside him like a bodyguard in a suit. Tiffany was there, too, sitting in the front row of the gallery, wearing a modest cream dress that was clearly chosen by a PR team to make her look supportive yet innocent. Isabella entered through a side door. She wore the same gray suit she had worn to the deposition. She carried no designer bag, just a battered leather folder. Arthur Penhaligon walked beside her, using a cane today, looking frail and harmless. The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with the scent of floor wax and tension. All rise. The baff boomed. The Honorable Judge Beverly Halloway swept into the room. She was a stern woman with a reputation for zero tolerance for theatrics. She took a seat and peered over her glasses at the two parties. Case number 49021. Vance versus Vance. Judge Holloway read, "We are here for opening statements and to rule on the motion for summary judgment regarding the validity of the prenuptial agreement and the division of assets." Ready for the petitioner. Harrison Stone stood up. He buttoned his jacket and walked to the podium, commanding the room. "Your Honor," Stone began, his voice rich and persuasive. "We are here today to correct a mistake. A mistake made by a brilliant young man who fell in love and was taken advantage of. My client Marcus Vance is a visionary. He has built a company that employs thousands. He has created value where there was none. And while he was doing this, toiling 18-hour days, what was the respondent doing?" Stone turned and pointed a finger accusingly at Isabella. She was waiting for the payout. The respondent, Isabella Vance, has contributed nothing to the marital estate. She brought no assets into the marriage. She generated no income during the marriage. She existed entirely on the generosity of my client, and now she seeks to disrupt a billion-dollar IPO by demanding a share of a company she doesn't understand, couldn't run, and didn't help build. Stone paused for effect. The gallery murmured. The narrative was compelling. The genius and the leech. "We are asking the court to enforce the prenuptial agreement strictly," Stone continued. "We are asking that the respondent be granted zero alimony. And frankly, Your Honor, we are asking for damages. The emotional stress this frivolous litigation has placed on Mr. Vance has been significant. We want to send a message that you cannot marry into success and expect a free ride." Stone sat down looking triumphant. Marcus nodded at him, a smug satisfaction radiating from him. "Mr. Penhaligon?" the judge asked. Arthur stood up slowly. He didn't walk to the podium. He stood at his table, leaning on his cane. He looked like a confused grandfather who had wandered into the wrong room. Clear his throat. "Your Honor," Arthur mumbled. "My client Isabella is a very private person. She didn't marry Mr. Vance for his money. In fact, when they met, Mr. Vance was, what was the term? Couch surfing." A few people in the gallery chuckled. Marcus' jaw tightened. "We do not contest that Mr. Vance built his company," Arthur continued. "We contest the characterization of my client as a financial burden. Mr. Stone calls her a leech. He claims she has no assets. He claims she is desperate for Mr. Vance's money." Arthur paused. He reached into his battered leather briefcase and pulled out a single thick document bound in blue paper. "We have filed the mandatory financial affidavit this morning." "Your Honor," Arthur said, "I believe the Claire has just placed it on your bench." Judge Holloway looked down. She picked up the document. "I have it here." Mr. Stone was very insistent during the deposition. Arthur, Clear's throat, said, his voice suddenly losing its frailty and becoming sharp as a razor. "He wanted to know if my client had assets over $5,000. He mocked her for mentioning a family trust. He claimed that compared to Mr. Vance's billions, she was a nobody." Marcus leaned over to Stone. "Why is he talking about this? Make him stop." Stone frowned. "He's grasping at straws. Let him embarrass himself." Arthur looked directly at Marcus. "We are happy to grant Mr. Vance his divorce. In fact, we agree that the financial entanglements should be severed immediately because, Your Honor, my client does not need Mr. Vance's money. She never did." Judge Holloway flipped open the document. The room went silent. The judge's eyes scanned the first page. Then she stopped. She blinked. She adjusted her glasses and looked closer. She turned the page, then another. The silence stretched out, becoming uncomfortable. Judge Holloway, a woman known for her stoic demeanor, looked up from the papers. Her expression had changed. She looked at Isabella Sterling with a mixture of shock and profound respect. "Mr. Penhaligon," the judge said, her voice sounding strange. "Is this verified?" "Certified by the auditing firm of Deote and the Swiss Banking Regulatory Commission, Your Honor," Arthur said. "Mr. Stone," the judge said, looking at the high-powered lawyer, "have you seen a copy of the respondent's financial disclosure?" "No, Your Honor," Stone said, standing up, annoyed. "We assume it's the usual, a checking account, and perhaps a used car. We didn't feel the need to waste time reviewing it before opening." "I suggest," Judge Holloway said, her voice dripping with sudden ice, "that you approach the bench and take a copy." Now Stone frowned. He walked up to the bench, took the document the Claire handed him, and walked back to his table. "What is it?" Marcus hissed. "What does she have?" Stone didn't answer. He opened the file. His eyes fell on the summary line at the bottom of page 1. Total liquid assets, 40,000, 20,000. Stone froze. He stopped breathing for a second. He turned the page. Real estate holdings 12500,000,000 told, including 40% ownership of the Port of Seattle, the Sterling Tower in Manhattan, the Hargrave Estate in Surrey, England. Stone's hands started to shake. He looked at the name at the top of the trust, the Sterling Hargrave Sovereign Trust, primary beneficiary, Isabella Sterling. Harrison, Marcus asked, panic rising in his voice. What is it? Stone looked at Marcus with a face drained of all color. He looked like he was about to vomit. You idiot, Stone whispered, forgetting to cover his microphone. The sound echoed through the courtroom. What? Marcus snapped. She's not broke, Stone hissed, his voice trembling. Marcus, she's the Sterling Aries. Do you know who the Sterlings are? They built the railroads. So, Marcus said, not getting it. She has some money. $1 million, too. Stone shoved the paper under Marcus's nose. Look at the number, Marcus. Look at the zeros. Marcus looked. Net worth estimate. 42 billion. 42 billion. Marcus Vance, the tech genius, the man who thought he was the richest person in the room, stared at the paper. His company was worth 300 million, maybe $1 billion if the IPO went perfectly. His wife, the woman he had mocked for wearing a cardigan, the woman he had tried to give $1,000 to, was worth 40 times more than he would ever be in his wildest dreams. This can't be real, Marcus stammered. It is real, Arthur Penhaligon said from across the aisle. The courtroom was dead silent. Arthur wasn't using the microphone, but everyone heard him. And since you filed a motion claiming that the marriage was fraudulent and based on financial deception, and since you demanded a strict enforcement of equitable division based on contribution. Arthur smiled. It was the smile of the executioner. We are counter-suing, Your Honor, not for alimony, but for defamation. And since Mr. Vance insisted that all assets generated during the marriage be subject to scrutiny regarding contribution, we would like to audit Vance Stream because it appears Mr. Vance used a shared marital checking account funded by my client's poverty wages to pay for the initial server hosting of his company. Technically, Your Honor, Isabella funded the seed round. The judge looked at Marcus. Mr. Stone, it appears your client has inadvertently opened the door to a claim of commingling of funds. If Mrs. Vance paid the electric bill that powered the servers, she owns a piece of the code. Marcus looked at Isabella. She was finally looking at him. Her face was calm, serene, and terrifying. I told you, Marcus, she said softly, her voice carrying through the silent room. I told you I would leave with exactly what I came with, but you insisted on dragging me here. Marcus felt the room spinning. He looked at Tiffany. She was staring at Isabella with her mouth open, the calculation already happening in her eyes. We need a recess, Stone shouted, his composure shattering. Your Honor, we request an immediate recess. Judge Holloway banged her gavel. Recess granted. 10 minutes. I suggest you use them wisely, Mr. Stone. You seem to have stepped into a bear trap. The heavy oak door of the defendant's consultation room slammed shut, cutting off the noise of the frantic gallery. Inside, the silence was suffocating. Harrison Stone loosened his tie, a gesture of defeat that Marcus had never seen, and the polished lawyer make before. Marcus paced the small room like a caged animal. He was sweating, his face pale and clammy. 42 billion, Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. He turned to Stone, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and a sudden sickening greed. Harrison, did you see that number? Is it real? Can it be real? It's certified by Diote, Stone said, collapsing into a chair and rubbing his temples. It's real, Marcus. The Sterling family. I should have known. The media calls them the Invisible Empire. I just didn't connect the dots. Sterling is a common name. I thought she was a nobody. She's a billionaire, Marcus said, a manic grin starting to form on his face. Harrison, think about this. She's my wife. We're married. That means I'm entitled to a share, right? Washington is a community property state. If we drop the prenup argument, if we say we were a partnership, Stone looked up at his client with a look of pure pity. You idiot. Did you not read the header? It's a sovereign trust. It's inheritance. In almost every jurisdiction, inheritance is separate property. You can't touch a dime of it unless she commingled it with marital assets. Did she? Marcus asked desperately. Did she put any money into our joint account? Stone laughed, a harsh barking sound. No, Marcus, that's the irony. You were so obsessed with keeping your money separate, with making her live on her poverty wages, that you forced her to keep her finances completely distinct. If you had treated her like a partner, if you had let her put her money into your house or your business, you might have had a claim. But because you treated her like a roommate you wanted to evict, her fortune is perfectly insulated. You played yourself. Marcus slammed his fist against the wall. There has to be a way. She loved me. She did this to test me, right? This is all a test. The door opened, and Tiffany slipped in. She was holding her phone, her face pale. Marcus, she said, her voice trembling. It's trending. Billionaire wife is trending on Twitter. People are digging up her background. They found photos of her at the Met Gala 10 years ago, masked as a debutante. And the investors? What about the investors? Marcus snapped. The board is calling. Tiffany said Goldman Sachs is asking why the wife of the CEO is suing the company. They're talking about pausing the roadshow for the IPO. Marcus felt the blood drain from his legs. No, they can't do that. I need that IPO. I'm leveraged to the hilt. We need to settle, Stone said, standing up. We need to go back in there and beg. Beg? Marcus sneered. I don't beg. You do today. Clears throat, Stone said grimly. Because right now you are a minnow swimming in a tank with a leviathan. If she wants to, she can buy your company just to shut it down. She can buy the law firm representing you and fire me. Do you understand the scale of money we are talking about? She has changed the weather money. You have Lisa Portia money. Marcus took a deep breath. He adjusted his jacket. He ran a hand through his hair. He looked in the mirror, practicing his smile, the one that had charmed venture capitalists and magazine editors. Get her in here, Marcus said. I'll talk to her without the lawyers. Just husband and wife. She won't agree to that. Stone said she will. Marcus said, his arrogance returning like a drug. She's Bella. She spent 5 years washing my socks. She's obsessed with me. She's just her. I can fix this. 5 minutes later, the door opened. But it wasn't just Isabella. Arthur Penhaligon walked in with her, followed by 2 large men in suits who stood by the door. Private security. Isabella walked in, and the atmosphere in the room shifted. She no longer looked like the gray mouse. She looked like a queen granting an audience to a peasant. You wanted to speak? Isabella asked, remaining standing. Bella, Marcus said, stepping forward with his hands open. Baby, look. This has all gotten out of hand. Lawyers, courts, it's not us. I know I've been stressed. The IPO pressure, it made me crazy. But I never stopped loving you. Isabella watched him with flat, dead eyes. You served me eviction papers, Marcus. You told me to find a clean motel. I was angry, Marcus pleaded. I was hurt that you were distant, and now I know why. You were hiding this huge part of yourself. Why didn't you tell me? We could have built an empire together. We still can. He reached for her hand. One of the security guards stepped forward, but Isabella held up a hand to stop him. She let Marcus touch her hand. His skin was damp. We can drop all this, Marcus said, his eyes gleaming. I'll fire Tiffany. She means nothing. She was just a distraction, a mistake. I'll send her away. It's you and me, Bella. Vance and Sterling. Imagine the power. In the corner, Tiffany let out a gasp. Marcus, what? Marcus didn't even look at her. Get out, Tiffany. Can't you see I'm talking to my wife? Tiffany stood there humiliated, tears welling in her eyes. She grabbed her bag and ran out of the room, slamming the door. Marcus smiled at Isabella. See, she's gone now. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about the future. Isabella slowly pulled her hand away. She reached into her bag and pulled out a sanitizing wipe. She methodically wiped the spot where Marcus had touched her. You really are a cliché, Marcus, she said softly. What? I thought you might have some dignity, she said. I thought you might fight me. But you're just a prostitute and not even an expensive one. Marcus's face turned red. Now wait a minute. No, you wait. Isabella snapped, her voice cracking like a whip. You think this is about money? You think I revealed the trust because I want to share it with you. I revealed it to show you how small you are. I am the CEO of a multinational tech company. Marcus shouted. You are the manager of a glorified website. Isabella corrected him. And as for your offer to be a power couple? She laughed. Marcus, I have dinner with prime ministers. I have tea with royalty. You are a man who cheats on his wife with his PR assistant and then tries to sue her for legal fees. You are an embarrassment. I will destroy you. Marcus hissed, his mask slipping. I will tell the press you lied. I will paint you as a fraud. Arthur Penhaligon stepped forward. Actually, Mr. Vance, we should discuss the fraud. Specifically the fraud you committed against the shareholders of Vance Stream. What are you talking about? Stone asked, stepping in. We mentioned the commingling of funds, Arthur said, opening a folder. During the deposition, Mr. Vance mocked my client for her poverty. He claimed he paid for everything, but we found a discrepancy. Arthur slid a piece of paper across the table. In 2018, Arthur explained, during the garage phase, Mr. Vance's credit cards were maxed out. The server hosting bill for the prototype of Vance Stream was due. It was $49.99 a month. If that bill hadn't been paid, the data would have been wiped. The company would have ceased to exist. Marcus looked at the paper. It was a bank statement from Isabella's meager personal account. Transaction. GoDaddy.com $149.99. I paid that bill for 6 months. Isabella said out of my library wages because you were crying on the floor saying you were ruined. So what? Marcus said it's a H100 red bucks. I'll write you a check right now. It's not the amount, Mr. Vance. Arthur said, his eyes twinkling. It's the timing. That payment preserved the intellectual property at its inception. In the state of Washington, that commingling of funds to preserve a marital asset creates a community lien on the asset. But more importantly, you never disclosed this to your investors. Stone went pale. Oh God. You signed a warranty to your investors stating that you were the sole creator and owner of the code free of any liens or encumbrances, Arthur continued. But you weren't. Your wife was funding the infrastructure. That is a material misstatement in your S-1 filing for the IPO. We are going to notify the SEC this afternoon, Isabella said calmly. You can't, Marcus whispered. That will kill the IPO. The stock will go to zero. I know, Isabella said. And since I have $42 billion, I don't really care about the stock price. I can afford to burn it down. What do you want? Marcus asked, his voice hollow. Just tell me what you want. Isabella leaned in close. I want you to admit it. On the record in open court. I want you to admit that you are a fraud, that I supported you, and that without me, you are nothing. I can't do that, Marcus said. It will ruin my reputation. Clears throat. Then we go to the SEC, Isabella said, turning to the door. Come along, Arthur. We have a phone call to make to the chairman. Wait, Marcus screamed. The courtroom was fuller than before when they returned. Word had spread. The hashtag Lord Billionaire Wife was now the #1 trending topic globally. The financial news networks CNBC Bloomberg had cut away from their regular programming to cover the Vance divorce implosion. Marcus walked in looking like a man marching to the gallows. Harrison Stone was actively trying to disassociate himself from his client, sitting a few inches further away than before. Judge Holloway banged the gavel. We are back on the record. Mr. Stone, have you had time to review the significant financial disclosures? We have, Your Honor, Stone said weakly. And how does the petitioner wish to proceed? Stone looked at Marcus. Marcus stood up. His hands were shaking so badly, he had to grip the table. He looked at the cameras in the back of the room. He knew the investors were watching. He knew the board was watching. Your Honor, Marcus said, his voice barely audible. I wish to withdraw my motion for summary judgment. Speak up, Mr. Vance, Judge Holloway commanded. I withdraw the motion, Marcus said louder. And I would like to amend my petition. Isabella sat perfectly still, her face a mask of stone. Arthur nudged her under the table. Go on, the judge said. I admit, Marcus said, choking on the words that the respondent, Isabella Vance, was instrumental in the founding of Vance Stream. The gallery gasped. I admit that during the early years when I had no income, she supported the household and paid for the critical infrastructure that kept the company alive. The claim that she contributed nothing was incorrect. Incorrect? Isabella spoke up. Or a lie, Mr. Vance, the judge asked. It was a lie, Marcus whispered. I lied. She saved me multiple times. And the prenuptial agreement? Arthur Penhaligon asked, standing up. We moved to void it. Marcus said it is invalid. Very well, Judge Holloway said, writing in her notes. The prenup is voided. Now, regarding the division of assets. Actually, Your Honor, Arthur interrupted, we have one more witness to call regarding the current valuation of Vance Stream. A witness, Stone asked. We didn't agree to this. It is a rebuttal witness, Arthur said, relevant to the value of the marital estate. Call your witness, the judge said. I call Mr. Jonathan Galt, Arthur said. A collective murmur went through the room. Jonathan Gort was a legend. He was the vulture of Wall Street, a private equity titan known, clear's throat, for dismembering companies. He walked into the courtroom wearing a black suit that cost more than Marcus's car. He took the stand. "Mr. Galt," Arthur asked, "you are an investor in Vance, are you not?" "I was," G said, his voice deep and growly. "My firm, Garrison Capital, held a 15% stake." "Held?" Arthur asked. "Past tense." "Yes," G said, looking directly at Marcus with contempt. "We exited our position 10 minutes ago." Marcus stood up. "You can't do that. The lockup period." "There is a clause in the contract," G said calmly. "The moral turpitude and fraud clause. If the founder is found to have materially misrepresented the company's origins or finances, the investors can trigger an immediate buyback or dump the shares on the secondary market." And Arthur asked, "We pulled out." "We did," Gort replied. "And we weren't the only ones. Sequoia and the rest have exited." Word of this hearing, and Mr. Vance admitting he misrepresented the IP ownership, sent the market into panic. "What's the company worth now?" Arthur asked. Galt glanced at his watch. "This morning, the IPO priced it at $1.2 billion. As of now, the underwriters have scrapped the offering. The private valuation has imploded. At this point, it's probably worth no more than the office furniture. It's radioactive. No one will invest in a company with disputed ownership over its core code." Marcus sank back into his chair. It was all gone. Every bit of it. The money, the spotlight, the promise of what was ahead, gone. Arthur then addressed the judge. "The marital asset known as Vance Stream now holds no real value. My client is prepared to relinquish any claim to half of nothing. Mr. Vance may retain full ownership of the company." "I don't want it," Marcus shouted. "It's destroyed. You ruined it. You created it," Isabella said calmly from her seat. Judge Holloway looked down at Marcus without a trace of sympathy. "Mr. Vance, it appears you have turned victory into loss. The divorce is hereby granted. I am affirming the validity of Mrs. Vance's separate property, the Sterling Trust, as the evidence shows there was no commingling on her part. You, however, admitted to commingling in the opposite direction." The judge struck her gavel. "Judgment is entered. The marriage is dissolved. Each party will retain their own assets. Mrs. Vance keeps her trust. Mr. Vance retains his debt-laden company." Marcus lifted his head, tears running down his face. "I further order you to pay the respondent's legal fees," the judge continued. "Mr. Penhaligon does not work cheaply." "I can't," Marcus sobbed. "I'm broke. The company accounts are frozen." "Then I suggest you get a job," the judge said flatly. Court is adjourned. As the bailiff called for everyone to rise, Isabella stood. She straightened her skirt and lifted her bag. She didn't glance back at Marcus, who sat with his face buried in his hands, while Harrison Stone was already closing his briefcase and preparing to leave him behind. She walked down the aisle as reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Vance, how does it feel?" "Isabella, will you be taking control of the company?" She paused at the doors. She faced the cameras. "My name," she said after clearing her throat, her voice steady and firm, "is Miss Sterling. And no, I won't be taking over the company. I prefer to put my money into things that actually have a future." She stepped out into the cool, overcast afternoon, but her business wasn't finished. One final matter remained. Inside the grand hall, the silence was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the smug laughter that had echoed there moments earlier. Robert's face had gone pale, his eyes flicking wildly between the legal papers spread across the table and the police officers entering through the double doors. The snare, carefully laid over the past 6 months, had finally closed. "You can't do this," Robert faltered, his voice breaking. "I'm the CEO. I own this city." David stepped forward, calmly straightening his cufflinks, the controlled gesture far more unsettling to his brother than any raised voice. "You owned an empty shell, Robert. While you were busy boasting and cutting corners to bankroll your indulgent lifestyle, I was quietly purchasing every debt you stacked against our family's legacy." "You don't own the company," he said. "The bank does. And as of this morning, I own the bank." A stunned murmur swept through the room. Board members, former allies, and the handful of loyal employees David had managed to shield. Understanding struck them all at once. The family's dismissed disappointment had not only outthought the favored son, but had entirely outplayed him. The lead officer stepped toward Robert, handcuffs catching the light of the chandeliers. Robert Sterling, you are under arrest for embezzlement, corporate fraud, and conspiracy. As the steel cuffs locked around Robert's wrists, he cast one final look at David, searching for even a hint of mercy. There was none. David's face remained composed, an impassive expression of quiet justice. He took no pleasure in watching his brother be escorted away, but he felt no sorrow either. It was simply the unavoidable result of years of unchecked greed. When the chaos subsided and the police vehicles disappeared down the street, Sarah rested a reassuring hand on David's shoulder. "It's over, David. You did it. You saved everything." David scanned the room, taking in the relief on the faces of employees who had been terrified of losing their livelihoods. He understood that this one wasn't about revenge or evening the score. It was about repair. He had reclaimed control not to dominate, but to restore what had been damaged. "No," David said quietly, a real smile finally softening his eyes as he looked at his team. "We did it. Now the real work starts." He turned and headed for the exit, the weight of the past finally slipping from his shoulders. The underdog hadn't just made noise, he had struck. In the process, he brought balance back to his world. It was a fitting conclusion for David. He showed that quiet isn't the same as weakness. Sometimes it's simply patience before action. Robert had spent his life convinced that wealth and status put him beyond consequence, only to learn too late that integrity prevails in the end. It's a stark reminder for everyone. Never underestimate those who stay silent, and never build your success on the harm of others. Eventually, the foundation will give way. I'm curious what you think about this ending. Was David justified in having his own brother arrested? Or should family always come first, no matter what? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this tale of revenge and redemption, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.